The rain in the cemetery was the kind of slow gray rain his father used to call honest weather, and the boy who was not a boy anymore stood at the lectern with a folded paper he did not need and looked out over a chapel full of dark suits, and one suit that was darker than them all. He was 31. He had buried his mother 8 years ago. He had not expected the most feared man in the city to come, and he had certainly not expected him to sit in the last pew at the back like any other mourner, hat in his lap, both hands flat on the brim. My father, the son began, drove the Mafia boss for 27 years. He never raised his voice in the car. He never used the radio. He never took a route he had not driven the night before, alone, to see what had changed on it. He told me once that a driver's job is to make a long road feel short and a bad day feel survivable. He did both for one man for a very long time. He folded the paper without looking at it. What I am about to say, my father made me promise I would say only on this day, and only to this room, and only if a certain man was in it. The boss did not move. The hat did not move. The whole chapel turned a quarter inch toward the back pew, and then a quarter inch back, and the son went on. To understand his father, the son said, you had to understand a night 20 years ago that the city had forgotten and the family had agreed not to remember. It was the year his father had been 34 and the boss had been 36, and there had been a man in a black sedan on a wet 2-lane road south of the river who had been paid to make sure the boss did not see. 37. His father had been driving. The road had been narrow, hedges close on both sides, no shoulder to take. The black sedan had come up fast on the inside curve and clipped the rear quarter and put them through the hedge. His father had wrestled the wheel through 3 rotations of glass and grass and bramble before the car came to rest on its side in a low field, one headlight still burning. The boss had been bleeding from a place his father did not want to look at. The sedan had not come back to finish the job, because the sedan, too, had gone off the road, but it would come back. His father had known the sedan would come back. He carried the boss, the son said, across a field in the dark to the only lit window in 2 miles. He kicked open the back door of a small roadside clinic. The night nurse, who was not supposed to be on that shift, who had stayed an hour late to finish a child's chart, was a young woman in her 2nd year of practice, with a steady hand and very little fear of bleeding strangers, and she did not ask my father one question for the first 40 minutes. In that small back room, the son said, with the rain on the metal roof and the headlights of the sedan beginning to crawl back along the road outside the window, the young nurse had done 4 things very quickly that the boss did not know she had done, and would not learn about for 20 years. She had stopped the bleeding. She had stitched the worst of the 4 cuts. She had pulled a long shard of windshield out of a place that would have killed him by morning. And she had asked his father, with a calm that did not match the hour, what his name was and whose blood was on her floor, and his father had told her the second answer and refused the first. And she had nodded and gone on working, as if she had been told everything she needed to know. My father told me later, the son said, that he had watched her hands and decided in that hour 2 things. 1, that the boss would live. 2, that whatever this young woman did or did not choose to do with the next hour of her life, he was going to spend the rest of his asking her to spend it near him. The chapel was very still. His father had asked her, when the bleeding slowed and her shoulders began to drop, whether anyone would come for them. She had said no. The doctor was at his daughter's wedding 2 towns over. The receptionist was home with a sick mother, and the keys to the back door were in her pocket. She had asked what she could do. His father had said, lock the front, turn off the sign, leave the lamp on the back porch burning. Go home in your car the way you always do. Do not come back here until morning. Then he had said, very low, please. She had done all of it, and she had come back at 5 in the morning, before her shift, and changed the dressings she had laid down the night before, and refused his father's money, and refused his father's address, and made him promise on the wet brow of the unconscious man on her table, that her name would not enter the boss's house. Not ever. Not for a thank you. Not for a reward. Not for a debt. Not for a wedding gift. Nothing. I am asking you, she had said to his father, to let me have done a thing for a man I do not know, for the only reason a person should ever do a thing for a stranger. If you let his family know my name, I will spend the rest of my life being thanked, and I do not want it. I want to be a nurse. I want to go home and sleep. Promise me. His father had promised. He had kept the promise for 20 years. The son lifted his head from the paper he was not reading. He looked at the back pew. The woman who saved your life that night, he said to the boss, was my mother. A sound moved through the chapel that was not quite a sound. The boss's hands did not lift from the hat. His head bent forward by a degree. The man beside him, the old butler, everyone called only by his last name, drew a long, careful breath and let it out and did not look at anyone. She had married his father 6 months after that night, the son said. They had moved twice, once to a town the boss did not know about, then back to the city only because his father could not bear to be far from the man he had pulled out of a hedge. His mother had returned to her clinic work. She had taken night shifts the way she had always taken them. She had refused, for the rest of her life, every offer the family had ever made. His father to live closer, to take a bigger apartment, to send the boy to a better school. She had said no thank you, and his father had said no thank you, and the family had stopped asking. She had died at 51 of a fast, quiet illness that took her in a season. She had been buried in the same small cemetery his father had asked to be buried in this morning. She had left one letter for his father, and his father had not opened it for 8 years. He opened it last month, the son said. When he learned he was sick, he read it once. He brought it to me. He said, "This stays with you, and when I am gone, you will decide if he should hear it. You will know when. You will know him by then." And he made me promise that if I decided to read it, I would read it on the day I buried him, and only if the boss was in the room. He unfolded the paper now. "My mother," he said, "wrote this to my father the year she got sick." He read it. "Tomas," she had written, "if you are reading this, then I am gone or going, and I want to tell you what I have never told you, and what you must never tell him. The night you brought him into my clinic, I did not save him because he was important. I saved him because I was the only person there. I would have done it for the worst man in the world, and I would have done it for the best, and I never asked which one he was because it did not matter to my hands. But after, when I had time to think, I made you promise to keep my name out of his house because I did not want my one good night to become his lifelong debt. A debt makes a man heavy. It changes how he sits at his own table. I have loved you for 30 years, and I have loved the quiet life you gave me because of what we did not take from him. Let him stay light. Let him think he was saved by luck, or by you, or by his own stubborn heart. He was. He was saved by all of those things. The hands were only the last of them. If a day comes when you must tell him because our boy must say it, or because the road has run out, tell him this from me, in my own words. Tell him I would have done it again. Tell him I am glad I did not know who he was. Tell him to forgive you for the long quiet. And tell him, for me, that the only thing I ever wanted in return was for him to keep his own promise, the one I never asked him for, and never doubted to be, as best he could, a decent man inside an indecent house. Your wife, Marisol." The son folded the letter. For a long moment, the only sound in the chapel was the rain. Then the boss stood up. He did it the way he did everything, slowly and without any extra motion, but in the back of the chapel it was as visible as a struck bell. He held his hat at his side. He walked the long aisle between the pews, past every face that had turned to him, and he stopped at the foot of the closed coffin, and he laid his right hand flat on the wood, the way the son's father had laid his hand flat on the back seat between them. At the end of every long drive, the small private signal of safe, the small private signal of arrived. He did not speak for a long time. Then he turned to the son. "Your father," he said, in the voice the city knew and the chapel had never expected to hear in this room, drove me through 1,000 nights. He kept the road short, and he kept the day survivable. And he did one other thing for me that I did not know he was doing, and now I do. His eyes moved to the chapel ceiling for the length of a breath. He brought them back. I am asking your permission to do one thing in your mother's name. And I am asking you because she would have asked it of you, and not of me. Yes, the son said. The boss turned to the room. The clinic she worked at, he said. The small one on the South Road that has been kept open all these years by a charity nobody quite remembers founding the deeds of that clinic. The salaries of every nurse who walks through that door, and the chair she sat in when she stitched a stranger, will go on as they have gone on. That is not new. That has been true for 20 years. His jaw moved once. What is new is the name above the door, which has never been on anything. From tomorrow morning, the door of that clinic will carry her name. Not because I owe it, because she earned it, and because a name on a door is a thing a son and a husband can stand in front of. The son's hand had begun, without his noticing, to tremble. And to you, the boss said, more quietly, your father refused. His whole life, every house I tried to put him in, he kept the small apartment because she loved it. He sent you to the school she liked. He took the bonus envelopes I gave him at Christmas, and I learned only last year that he had not opened any of them. They were in a box under his bed, every envelope sealed. I opened them after he was admitted to the hospital. The money is yours. He would not take it. She would not take it. It was always yours. I should have understood that 20 years ago. I understand it now. The son could not speak. He nodded. The boss looked once more at the coffin. He lifted his hand from the wood. He set the hat on his head and adjusted it the small way he adjusted things when he was about to leave a room that had asked a great deal of him. At the door of the chapel, he stopped, as if he had remembered one more thing, and turned halfway back. Tell her, when you next come here, he said, that he kept his promise. Then he was gone, into the slow, honest rain, with the old butler a step behind him. In the days after, the son said later in the bookkeeping of his own life, he would understand a great many things he had only suspected. He would understand why his father had refused the houses and the cars and the schools. He would understand why his mother had laughed when his father came home with stories about the boss being tender to a horse, or quiet at a christening, or careful with a frightened child at the door of the dentist. He would understand why the small apartment on the 3rd floor of the building above the bakery had always smelled of bread and lemon polish and his mother's particular soap, and why his parents, at the end of a long day, had sat at the kitchen table and held each other's hands, the way two people hold hands when they have made a long bargain together, and have somehow, against the weight of everything, kept it. He would also understand. On the morning he passed the small South Road clinic and saw the painters on the ladder fitting the new bronze letters above the door, what his mother had meant when she had asked his father to let her have done a thing for the only reason a person should ever do a thing for a stranger. The letters were small. There was no plaque, no story, no ribbon, no speech, only her name, above a door that opened on patients all day long, and on a back lamp that stayed lit all night, the way she had asked his father to leave a lamp lit, once, 20 years before. He stood under the rain for a long time and watched them set the last letter in place. A black car was parked across the street. He did not need to look. When the painters were finished and the ladder came down, the car eased away from the curb without a sound, and the son walked home along the wet pavement, and somewhere on the river road, in a back seat that had carried his father for 27 years, the most feared man in the city sat with his hat in his lap, both hands flat on the brim, and let the long quiet of the drive be, for once, the quiet of arrival. The son understood then that his father had been right about a driver's work. A driver makes a long road feel short, and a bad day feel survivable. A driver, the very best kind, can also carry one bleeding stranger across a dark field to the only lit window in 2 miles, and trust the woman behind that window to do what she does, and keep her name safe inside his own chest for the rest of his life, and call all of that, when it was over, an ordinary day's work. That, he said, was the inheritance his father had left him, not the envelopes, not the bronze letters above the door. The shape of a code that a quiet decency kept long enough and asked nothing of will become a kind of love, that the right secret kept by the right man can save more than one life, that a son who is given such a code does not get to refuse it, and that he, standing under the rain in the cemetery on the day they buried the man who had taught him every word of it, did not, in the end, want to. He walked the long way home. The rain stayed honest. The lamp above the bakery was already on.